Some weaknesses arrive quietly, not as wounds, but as habits. A hesitation before speaking, a tightening in the chest when authority enters the room, a need to prove, or a fear of being seen. Often, these patterns are blamed on personality or fate, but beneath them lies something older, something inherited, not through words, but through silence. A father's distance, a father's anger, a father's absence, or even a father's quiet love that never learned how to speak. What feels like personal weakness is often a relational echo, a story that began long before it was understood. There is a moment when something unnamed begins to surface. Not loudly, not urgently. It arrives as a feeling that repeats itself. A familiar tension in conversations, a discomfort with authority, a need to be perfect or invisible, a sense that strength must always be proven or never shown at all. At first, it feels personal, like a flaw in character. People describe it as insecurity, sensitivity, weakness. They carry it privately, assuming it belongs to them alone. But quiet recognition does not arrive through judgment. It arrives through noticing. Noticing how the body reacts before the mind understands, how the chest tightens when disapproval is sensed, how silence feels safer than expression, how approval feels necessary, even when it costs something. This recognition is subtle. It does not accuse, it does not explain itself. It simply asks again and again, why does this feel so familiar? Often, these patterns appear in adulthood without a clear memory attached. There is no dramatic trauma to point to, no single moment that explains everything, just a pattern, a tone of voice that still carries weight, a look that still shapes behavior, an absence that still echoes. This is where recognition becomes emotional rather than intellectual. The realization that certain reactions are older than the present moment, that the fear does not belong to now, that the hesitation did not begin. Here, people begin to sense that their weakness has a history, not a story told in words, but one learned through atmosphere, through what was allowed, through what was discouraged, through what was never modeled. The recognition is often accompanied by confusion. Love exists alongside discomfort, gratitude alongside resentment, loyalty alongside quiet grief. There is no clear villain, only a growing awareness that something formative occurred before language was fully formed. And this awareness does not demand answers yet. It simply opens a door to the possibility that what feels broken may have once been protective, that what feels limiting may have once been necessary. That weakness may not be weakness at all but memory. This chapter is not about confrontation. It is about acknowledgement. The moment someone stops asking, "What is wrong with me?" and Benji is asking, "Where did this begin?" that question alone changes the emotional landscape. Because recognition is the first shift from self-blame to understanding. Long before patterns are named, they are lived. Before beliefs are formed, they are absorbed. Childhood is not remembered as a timeline. It is remembered as a feeling. A father's presence teaches something without instruction. So does his absence. So does his unpredictability. So does his silence. Children do not analyze these experiences. They adapt to them. If warmth is inconsistent, the child learns vigilance. If affection is conditional, the child learns performance. If anger fills the room without warning, the child learns restraint. If emotional expression is absent, the child learns to contain. None of this is conscious. It is survival translated into behavior. A father does not need to be cruel to shape fear. He does not need to be neglectful to shape doubt. Sometimes, he only needs to be emotionally unavailable in a world that required emotional guidance. For some, the father was physically present, but internally distant. For others, he was loving, but overwhelmed. For others still, he was admired and feared in equal measure. The child's nervous system records all of it, not as judgment, but as instruction. This is where weakness quietly begins, not as a defect, but as a solution. A solution to unpredictability. A solution to emotional scarcity. A solution to power imbalance. If approval was rare, seeking it became necessary. If criticism was sharp, self-doubt became safer than confidence. If vulnerability was met with dismissal, emotional armor formed early. These adaptations make sense when seen from the child's position. They are intelligent responses to limited information and limited power. Yet adulthood carries them forward without updating the context. The body remembers a father's tone even when the father is no longer present. The mind anticipates judgment before it arrives. The heart hesitates, unsure whether expression will be welcomed or punished. And still, love remains. This is what makes the origin difficult to confront. The father is not only the source of pain, he is also the source of identity, safety, and belonging. Questioning the origin can feel like betrayal. Acknowledging the impact can feel ungrateful. Understanding can feel dangerous. So many people choose not to look back. They carry the weight forward instead. But the origin does not demand blame. It only asks to be seen accurately. Not through idealization, not through condemnation, but through clarity. Because weakness formed in childhood was not weakness at all. It was adaptation, and every adaptation has a story. This is where that story quietly begins. What feels personal is often patterned. What feels chosen is often learned. Psychology does not describe inheritance as a transfer of traits alone, but as a transfer of emotional regulation, perception, and response. A father does not only pass down genetic, he passes down nervous system rhythms, ways of handling stress, ways of responding to conflict, ways of relating to authority, closeness, and self-worth. This transmission happens silently. Attachment theory explains that a child's sense of safety is shaped by how consistently care is offered. When a father is emotionally available, the child learns that expression is safe. When he is distant or unpredictable, the child learns to regulate alone. Over time, the child stops expecting comfort. Not because it is unwanted, but because it is unreliable. The brain adapts accordingly. Neuroscience shows that early relational experiences shape the development of the limbic system, the part of the brain responsible for emotional processing and threat detection. If connection is inconsistent, the brain stays alert. If approval is conditional, self-monitoring intensifies. If anger appears without warning, hypervigilance becomes normal. This is not memory in the narrative sense. It is procedural memory. The body learning how to be. A father who suppresses emotion teaches restraint without words. A father who dominates teaches submission or rebellion. A father who avoids conflict teaches silence. Even a well-intentioned father can pass down unresolved patterns. Stress left unprocessed. Fear disguised as control. Love expressed through provision rather than presence. Children interpret these patterns egotistically. They assume causation where there is only correlation. If warmth disappears, they assume fault. If anger appears, they assume responsibility. Over time, this interpretation solidifies into identity. I must try harder. I must stay quiet. I must not need too much. I must be strong. These beliefs do not feel inherited. They feel intrinsic, yet psychology reveals something crucial. What is learned implicitly can feel biologically true. This is why weakness feels permanent, why certain reactions feel inevitable, why insight alone does not dissolve them. Because the inheritance is not cognitive, it is embodied. The father becomes an internal reference point, a voice, a standard. A pressor, even when physically absent, his emotional imprint remains active. This chapter does not suggest inevitability. It suggests origin. Understanding inheritance is not about assigning fault. It is about restoring accuracy. Seeing that the struggle did not arise in isolation, that weakness did not appear spontaneously, that what feels flawed may be patterned memory repeating itself. And patterns, once seen, behave differently. Not immediately, not dramatically, but they begin to loosen. Their grip the moment they are understood as learned rather than faded. Few inner conflicts are as quiet and persistent as this one. The simultaneous pull toward a father and the urge to move away from his shadow. Love does not disappear when pain is present. It becomes complicated. For many, the father is remembered through contradictions. It's moments of care beside moments of distance. Protection alongside fear. Pride mixed with a sense of never being enough. The mind struggles to hold both truths at once. So it often chooses one. Some idealize. They minimize the impact. They explain the pain away with logic, culture, or circumstance. He did his best. He provided. He meant well. Others internalize the conflict differently. They carry anger that feels disloyal, resentment that feels unjustified, grief that feels exaggerated. This is where resistance forms. Resistance to acknowledging hurt. Resistance to naming absence. Resistance to admitting that love and harm can coexist. Psychologically, this tension is protective. A child depends on attachment for survival. To see the caregiver clearly, especially their limitations, can feel threatening. So the mind preserves the bond by absorbing the cost internally. Self-doubt becomes safer than disconnection. Self-criticism feels more controllable than relational loss. Weakness becomes preferable to abandonment. Even in adulthood, this loyalty persists. People defend the father reflexively. They soften memories. They reframe experiences. They silence parts of themselves that question too much. At the same time, the inherited patterns continue to cause friction. Difficulty trusting authority, fear of disappointing others, an internal pressure to perform or withdraw. This creates an emotional stalemate. 2. Acknowledge the father's influence feels like betrayal. To ignore it feels like suffocation. So many remain suspended between gratitude and grief, unable to release either. The resistance is not stubbornness. It is devotion. Devotion to the bond that shaped them. Devotion to the narrative that made survival possible. But this devotion comes at a cost. The cost of misdirected self-blame. The cost of carrying inherited weight without context. Loving and resisting are not opposites here. They are intertwined. This chapter is not about choosing sides. It is about understanding why the conflict exists. Because when weakness is tied to loyalty, healing feels like disobedience. And until that connection is gently examined, the struggle remains not with the father, himself, but with the internalized version that still holds power. There is a moment when the story loosens. It's not because it is challenged, but because it is seen clearly. This moment does not arrive as confrontation. There is no argument, no accusation, no demand for resolution. It arrives as a quiet shift in perception. The father is no longer only a symbol, no longer only an authority, no longer only a source of approval or fear. He becomes human, a person shaped by his own limitations, his own unfinished emotional history, his own inherited silences. This realization does not excuse harm. It contextualizes it. Weakness begins to separate from identity. The patterns that once felt like personal failure are reinterpreted as learned responses. Not chosen, not deserved. Learned. In this moment, the nervous system recognizes something new. The threat is no longer present in the same way. The body begins to understand what the mind already knows. That the past is not the present. That the internalized voice is not the current environment. This is subtle work. There is no dramatic release, only a softening, a pause before self-criticism, a breath where fear once rushed in, a moment of choice, where reaction once felt automatic. The father's influence does not disappear. It becomes proportionate, no longer larger than life, no longer defining. This is where responsibility shifts not toward blame, but toward awareness. The realization is not, he caused this. It is, this began there. That distinction matters, because seeing accurately dissolves shame. It returns weakness to its original context as adaptation, not defect. And with that shift, compassion becomes possible. Not forced forgiveness, not reconciliation, but understanding without distortion. The child within no longer needs to defend or accuse. They are allowed to simply observe. This moment of seeing is not the end of the story. It is the end of confusion. From here, patterns can be held differently, less tightly, with more space around them. The father remains part of the story, but no longer the author of the future. And in that space, something new becomes possible. Not change yet, but clarity. Clarity that gently untangles identity from inheritance. Integration is not erasure. It does not remove the past. It reorganizes the relationship to it. After clarity arrives, something quieter begins. A slow internal adjustment. A rebalancing. The inherited patterns are no longer fought. They are no longer denied. They are acknowledged as part of the internal landscape. This is where blame becomes unnecessary. Blame keeps the nervous system oriented toward threat, toward defense, toward justification. Integration moves in the opposite direction. It allows the father to exist as a full figure, not idealized, not demonized, but human. And it allows the self to exist without carrying misplaced responsibility. Weakness, when integrated, loses its charge. It is no longer evidence of failure. It becomes information, a signal of old learning, a trace of earlier conditions, a reminder of what once felt necessary. This process does not require reconciliation. It does not demand confrontation. It does not insist on forgiveness. It is internal, a quiet release of the need to explain oneself to a past that cannot respond psychologically. This integration reduces internal conflict. The nervous system no longer oscillates between loyalty and resentment. The body no longer prepares for judgment that never comes. What replaces it is neutrality. Not indifference, but steadiness. The father's voice, once loud, becomes one voice among many. No longer the standard, no longer the measure of worth. Identity expands. There is room for softness without fear, for confidence without defiance, for presence without performance. This is not transformation as reinvention. It is transformation as permission. Permission to respond to the present rather than react to the past. Permission to hold history without being held by it. Integration honors the role the father played and releases the role he no longer needs to play. This is where strength redefines itself, not as dominance, not as emotional absence, but as internal alignment. Where weakness, once misunderstood, becomes a doorway, not to correction, but to coherence. What remains is not a conclusion, it is a spaciousness. The Father's influence does not vanish with understanding. It settles, it takes its rightful size. No longer looming, no longer defining. Simply present like weather that once shaped the land, but no longer controls the sky. What once felt like weakness now feels familiar without being heavy. A pattern recognized, a memory understood, a response that no longer surprises. This is not freedom from history, it is freedom within. The past is allowed to exist without explanation, without defense, without apology. The Father remains a chapter, not the whole book. A voice, not the chorus. A part of the story, not its ending. What emerges quietly is authorship, not control. Not reinvention, but orientation. Life is no longer organized around proving, pleasing, or protecting against an old image. Attention returns to the present moment, to relationships as they are, to emotions as they arise, to the self as it exists now. This awareness does not demand change, it allows it. The body learns new rhythms simply by no longer repeating the old ones automatically. The mind loosens its grip on narratives that once felt necessary. And in this looseness, something deeply human appears. An understanding that inheritance is not destiny. That influence is not ownership. That origin is not obligation. What remains quietly true is this: the weakness was never a flaw. It was a language learned early. And languages can be understood without being spoken forever. The story does not end with separation from the Father, nor with union. It ends with proportion. With the recognition that the self is larger than any single relationship, even the first one. And in that recognition, there is calm. Not because the past is resolved, but because it no longer needs to be. It rests where it belongs.